DFS community, welcome into the Week 15 edition of one of the most accurate DFS shows in the industry. This is episode number 61 of the Adjusted Line Play Report, where we take a deep dive into the play in the trenches to determine game script and player outcomes. This show is presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find myself over on Twitter at Todzilla1337. And you can find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. All right, folks, we're going to try to get this one in under an hour here. Recording on Thursday night just due to the Saturday games coming out and not really being able to record on Friday morning before work starts. So going to do a Thursday night recording. Keep that in mind. These lines and stuff can change as the days go on. And really with this Saturday slate, that's why I wanted to get this one underway and get it recorded on Thursday so we can get this three-game Saturday slate hashed out well in advance. If I record this on Saturday and get it out at 10:30, it doesn't do you much good in your weekly start-sit decision. So we'll do it on Thursday for y'all to manage that Saturday game. So starting with that Saturday slate, we're just going to treat it as a three-game slate. So Saturday night football, if you will be the number one game total on the slate at 47.5 points. This is Denver heading into Detroit. Detroit 4.5-point home favorites, giving them a 26 team implied total. Denver at 21.5. That's good for number one on the slate for Detroit, number 4 for Denver out of the 6 teams. Getting into the Denver side, and like I said, I'm going to try to get through this a little bit quicker. We're just going to look at the big picture for each team, kind of look at how we think this game script might go and some of the players that we could attack. So Denver 26-23, pretty even there. Offensive pass DVOA, pretty even. Run game, very even at number 12 for Denver, number 11 for Detroit. And offensive run DVOA, again, pretty even. Denver, number 10, Detroit, number 7. So pretty even across the board, one of those situations where studs eat. In this particular scenario, I'm just going to say, hey, Denver's maybe going to have a little bit of extra time to throw the ball than they're used to. Detroit's defense isn't what it was at the beginning of the season, and they've actually been kind of giving it up to people in the air game. So Russell Wilson's kind of interesting here with this run game being kind of a neutral situation. Really, Javonte Williams is getting the vast majority of that work, but in the pass game, it seems to be mainly Samaje Perine with him mixed in a little bit and Jaleel McLaughlin spelling the two of them here and there in the run game. But really looking like a stalemate across the board in a situation like this. I would expect kind of Javonte Williams and Sutton to continue what they've been doing in the pass game, maybe to be a little bit more effective than they're used to in that run game, maybe a little bit less effective than they're used to. Getting into the Detroit side, they're number 5 in offensive pass protection, Denver number 8 in the pass rush. Pass DVOA, 13 for Detroit's offense, 20 for Denver. Slight favor there for Detroit. But looking at the run blocking, Detroit number 2, Denver number 31 in stopping the run. Detroit number 4 in offensive run DVOA, Denver 31st in defensive run DVOA. Now really a lot of this poor play from Denver's defense did come in the earlier part of the season. They got smashed by Miami, and then a few other teams were doing pretty good in the run game against Denver. I think they've shored that up a little bit here, but obviously still at number 31. They're not great enough to move them off of one of the worst teams in the league. Detroit, one of the best running teams in the league. I would highly point towards the Detroit run game in this being how Detroit's going to move the ball effectively. I think they're going to be under a little bit more pressure than they would like in that pass game, needing to get the ball out a little bit quicker. Fortunately, that plays into their strengths with Jahmyr Gibbs, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. They're more of underneath targets. Would kind of avoid the Jameson Williams route in a game like this, where I don't think he's necessarily going to have the amount of time necessary, unless he's getting one of those goal line carries like he's been getting here and there throughout the season. But really, I think Detroit's going to be attacking the pass or the run game, and that's how I go. Denver looking at Sutton and Javonte Williams there, with Russ kind of as a a middling guy, but on a 3-game slate could certainly be the number one there. So in reverse chronological order is how we will go in here, because the Saturday afternoon game, Pittsburgh at Indianapolis, is the second best one on the slate. We have Pittsburgh heading into Indianapolis. Indianapolis 1.5-point home favorites at 42.5. So already dropped down 5 points there. That Vegas game total gives Indianapolis a 22-point team implied total and Pittsburgh a 20.5 team implied total, making Indianapolis the second best on the slate, Pittsburgh fifth best on the slate. Getting into the Pittsburgh side, number 8 in offensive pass protection, Indianapolis number 6 in the pass rush. Pretty even up there. Probably Pittsburgh going to have a little bit more pressure on them than they would like, and perhaps than they're used to in terms of taking sacks. On the pass DVOA side, Indianapolis is actually pretty good at number 11, Pittsburgh 21st in the offensive pass DVOA, so it doesn't look on paper like a very good matchup, even though we've seen Indianapolis give it up on defense, scoring-wise. A lot of times that's directly related to the run game here, as we see Pittsburgh number 13 in run blocking, Indianapolis 22 on the defense, and then run DVOA, Pittsburgh number 11, Indianapolis number 26. It was telling me Pittsburgh probably going to lean pretty heavily on the run game. Najee Harris certainly in play there. Jaylen Warren could be a asset as well. And if Pittsburgh's going to be kind of under duress here with this Indianapolis team getting after them, Jaylen Warren could certainly see a few more dump-offs. We could see a little bit more action to the underneath guys like Deontay Johnson and Pat Freiermuth as well. So those guys are intriguing. On the Indianapolis offensive side, they're number 12 in pass protection. Pittsburgh number 10 in the defensive pass rush. Got TJ Watt over there, pretty good at getting after the quarterback. This is kind of an even matchup, but really Indianapolis probably going to be under a little bit more duress than they're perhaps used to with the top 10 unit coming into town. That pass DVOA even better for Pittsburgh at 8. Indianapolis worse at number 20 in the offensive pass DVOA. This is telling me that Indianapolis probably going to have a little bit more pressure than they're used to, and they're going to struggle to move the ball a little bit. In scenarios like this, I'd expect a few more targets to go to the running backs here, so don't be shocked to see Zach Moss with 5 or 6 catches in this game. I would also heavily lean towards Michael Pittman in this versus some of the other wide receivers. I know Josh Downs is the slot receiver in Pittsburgh. It's been kind of getting destroyed by the slot receiver this season. That's certainly a dart throw on a 3-game slate that you could run out there, but not looking like a great matchup there for Indy's pass game. Getting into the run game, Indianapolis number 24 in run blocking, Pittsburgh 20th, so pretty close there, slightly in the favor of Pittsburgh. And then in the run DVOA, Indianapolis number 8, Pittsburgh 11. So again, pretty even matchup. This one is slightly in the favor of Indianapolis. Based off of these, I'd expect that run game perhaps to be a little bit better than the pass game. And in this particular situation, kind of looking at Pittsburgh's run game and the pass game maybe being a little bit below average, but then the Indianapolis side here, kind of both run game being pretty neutral and the pass game below average. I'm going to go ahead and, we're going to hit the purge siren here for a upset alert. I think Pittsburgh can go into Indianapolis and actually pull this one out based off of the adjusted line play report. Obviously, we've seen this line actually get closer and closer to even here. I think it started out Indianapolis minus 2.5 or minus 3, and it's slowly been being bet down to the Pittsburgh, getting closer to the Pittsburgh side. So people throwing their money in there also think that Pittsburgh can maybe pull this one out in Indianapolis. So don't be shocked if that happens on Saturday afternoon. Getting into the next game, Minnesota and Cincinnati. We drop down to the worst game in the Saturday slate here. Third best at 40.5. We have Minnesota heading into Cincinnati, and at the moment, Cincinnati is 3-point home favorites over Minnesota, and that gives Cincinnati a 21.75 team implied total and Minnesota an 18.75 team implied total. Third best on the slate for Cincinnati, worst on the slate for Minnesota there. News that Nick Mullins will be starting, and then Jaron Hall, the rookie, will be backing up with Dobbs as a third-string emergency quarterback. Getting into the Minnesota offensive side, number 20 in pass protection, Cincinnati number 11 in defensive pass rush. To me, this suggests that Cincinnati might be able to apply some pressure to Minnesota, and they're going to need to get the ball out a little bit quicker. The DVOA is pretty evenly matched, or exactly evenly matched there at 17 across the board for offensive pass DVOA and defensive pass DVOA. In the situation, we say studs eat, and we could certainly see Justin Jefferson have a solid matchup. If he's getting open, he's going to be getting the ball and trying to get that ball out a little bit quicker. He might be the safety valve that's always going to be open that they get the ball to. Otherwise, looking at Hawkinson and kind of the dump offs to probably going to be Ty Chandler here. It sounds like Alexander Madison's banged up. More and more likely looking like Ty Chandler is the running back that's going to get all the work. And then getting into the run blocking, this one's maybe a little bit juicier here. Minnesota number 17 in run blocking, Cincinnati 26 in stopping the run. Pretty heavily there in the favor of Minnesota, almost a plus 10, and really looking like they're going to be able to move that ball consistently forward, which is good for sustaining their drives. And then looking at the run DVOA, Minnesota really bad at 30th, but Cincinnati down at 27. Now, Minnesota has been really bad in the run department. Alexander Madison, part of that. But really looking at the Cincinnati side, they're 27th in run DVOA, which tells me that Minnesota actually might find the run game a lot more successful than they're perhaps used to in a lot of their matchups this season, which makes Ty Chandler even more enticing if Alexander Madison misses this game. Getting into that Cincinnati side, we have them at number 7 in offensive pass protection. Keep in mind, adjusted sack rate. A lot of this came with Joe Burrow in there. Minnesota, middle of the pack there at 14 in the defensive pass rush. On paper, indicative Cincinnati might have a little bit of extra time to throw the ball. Not an astronomical amount of time, but good for any guy named Jake Browning to go in there and not have to worry too much about the defense getting home and getting sacks. The pass DVOA, a different story though, flip-flopped. Minnesota 7th in pass DVOA on defense, Cincinnati 15th in the pass DVOA on offense, really indicating that Minnesota on a play-in and play-out basis probably going to be okay against the pass here. Cincinnati might struggle a little bit compared to that, with Minnesota being a top 7 unit. Cincinnati kind of in the middle of the pack. Wouldn't be shocked. Minnesota runs some exotic defensive looks with Flores there, so I wouldn't be surprised. I kind of called the Raiders game where, hey, I just think Aiden O'Connell, he's a rookie, probably not going to be able to handle these defenses, and we kind of saw that play out. Minnesota shut out the Raiders. While there wasn't an astronomical amount of turnovers like I thought there might be, that shutout goes a long way for your defense in fantasy land. I would expect more of the same here with Jake Browning, backup quarterback. I wouldn't be shocked to see the Minnesota defense here kind of stymie that that Cincinnati offense there in the pass game. Getting into the run blocking, Cincinnati number 19. Minnesota's defense at number 14, and then the run DVOA for Cincinnati 17, Minnesota number 5 in the defensive run DVOA, so top 5 unit versus middle of the pack there for Cincinnati. Really looking like the route for Cincinnati is perhaps that pass game. It's a little bit of a favor there, where, hey, they should have some time. The pass DVOA is not quite as terrible as the matchup as the run DVOA. Mixon hasn't been super effective pretty much the whole season either. So I would really looking like Cincinnati's going to struggle in this. I'm going to go ahead. Hey, I think we're going to see 2 upsets here on Saturday, the early game and the afternoon game. I think we see Minnesota head into Cincinnati here, pull this one out, running the ball effectively, having an all right game in the pass game. I think we see Minnesota take this from Cincinnati, while Cincinnati kind of struggles on offense for the first time under Jake Browning. So that's going to do it for the Saturday slate. That's a 3-game slate. Let's get into the main slate. And again, this is a 10-game slate, so keep that in mind. And really what's interesting here is the top 3 games. So we see here San Francisco and Arizona at 47.5. That's the 3rd highest total on this main slate. That's pretty good. 47.5 this season. A lot of weeks that would have been number 1. This week it's number 3. We see a 50.5 here, Washington and LA, and then a tie for first actually is Dallas and Buffalo here. in that Sunday late game. So 2 of them there tied for first overall at 50.5. So very interesting. 50.5, bumping down to 47.5. But if we look at number 4, it drops down from 50.5 or 47.5 all the way down to 42.5, which is pretty low. Those low 40s are starting to get into, hey, I might not want very many people or any at all from this particular game. So keep that in mind. Those late games there, all the top 3 games on the slate. So the first Sunday late game here, San Francisco and Arizona, Washington, LA, and Dallas and Buffalo are going to be the ones that you're going to be interested in fantasy land. Got expensive players here from Dallas and Buffalo, LA kind of spendy, San Francisco spendy. So it might be difficult to get into these games, but just keep that in mind. They are, at least as of Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening here, the 3 best games by a mile on this slate. So let's hop into the number 1 game on the slate. We'll treat it just the same as all the rest of them, trying to look at the big picture and put the game pieces together. So Washington at LA, 50.5 Vegas game total, number 1 on the slate. 6.5 point home favorites there for the Rams. Washington 6.5 point underdogs on the road. That gives LA a 28.5 team implied total. Washington 22 team implied total. That's second best for the Rams on the entire slate for a team implied total. And Washington at number 9, so still a top 10 team there. Getting into the Washington side, 31st in offensive pass protection. LA a little bit below average on defense at number 19. Really looking at LA's defense here, they probably should be able to generate some sacks. Washington has taken a bazillion sacks this season. I would expect that to continue with this LA defense here. The offensive pass DVOA, though, pretty close here. Washington number 25, LA at number 22. This is telling me, hey, Washington hasn't been like super efficient on the offense when they've been passing the ball. They just get there on volume. They might find the efficiency tick up a little bit here against this LA team who's below average there at number 22, approaching almost a red unit here with the last 10 on the in the NFL. So I think Washington actually can get it done here in the air. I think they find a little bit of extra oomph behind the passes in general. Don't be shocked to see a little bit more yardage per attempt in this particular game. Number 19 is below average in the pass rush, so Washington maybe has a little bit more time to throw the ball than they're used to. Getting into the run game, this is also pretty decent for Washington. So number 11 in run blocking, LA 25th. So really looking at Washington having some positive plays when they're running the ball, being able to move it effectively there. The run DVOA, Washington at number 21, LA at 21. So pretty even there. Those are the situations where the studs eat. I don't think Washington has any studs there, but pay attention if there's injuries or anything to Brian Robinson. It could be the Gibson show there in LA. And hey, if they're getting after Washington, you might see some of these underneath dump offs to him. He's certainly a dart throw in DFS, but really looking like Washington, their DVOAs match up pretty well here against this LA defense, which is telling me that Washington might put up some points in this game. So don't be shocked if they're over that 22-point team implied total, even on the road here. Getting into the LA side, third in offensive pass protection, Washington 25th. In the pass rush, LA should have a bazillion hours to throw in this particular matchup. LA pass DVOA number 8, Washington dead last at 32. Really indicative that LA's passing game is going to be super strong. So Stafford, he's going to be popular in DFS, and rightfully so. Probably going to be stacked at least once, if not mainly twice, with Puka and Cooper Kupp there. They're certainly in a solid spot here against this terrible Washington defense. Going to be a good matchup for the LA offense there, moving the ball in the air. Getting into the ground game, number 5 in offensive run blocking, Washington 16th in stopping the run. That's pretty heavily in the favor there of LA on a play-to-play basis. Should be gaining some positive yardage there against this Washington defense. And then the run DVOA, number 7 for LA, so that's a top 10 unit, been pretty good. Washington also pretty good at number 8. So really kind of a neutral situation there. Nothing to write home about. Studs eat. We certainly see Kyron Williams be very good this season. I don't necessarily think he's a stud in terms of talent, but in the run game anyway. So he should be fine in this. He should perform well. LA should be really good in this pass attack. I'd expect them to put up a ton of points. I see why they're at least the top 2 team here. I would not be shocked to see them put up, 31 to, close to 40 points in this particular matchup against the Washington defense. I think they'll move the ball really, really effectively. I think Washington can put up some points against this LA team. I really like this being a shootout opportunity, even though both units don't play super fast. All right, let's get into the other number 1 game on the slate. Dallas and Buffalo, potential Super Bowl matchup here if Buffalo can get in and run the table. All right, we have Dallas heading into Buffalo. Buffalo 2-point home favorites. It's a 50.5 game total, like I said, with that 2-point favorite. That gives Buffalo 26.25 team implied total, Dallas at 24.25. So Buffalo 3rd best on the slate, Dallas 4th best on the slate. It's a pretty evenly matched game here. According to Vegas, at least on Thursday night, offensive pass protection for Dallas, number 14, Buffalo, number 9. I'd expect Dallas to be under a little bit more duress in this particular matchup than they're perhaps used to. They're kind of middle of the pack in pass protection, Buffalo top 10 unit. This is going to lead to a little bit quicker throws, so don't be shocked to see Pollard and the tight end there, Ferguson, get heavily involved in this particular matchup. The pass DVOA number 5 versus number 16, so kind of flip-flop. Dallas the top 5 unit and Buffalo middle of the pack there in pass DVOA. This is telling me that Dallas should be able to sustain their drives in the air and have pretty good success in that department. So I also don't mind CeeDee Lamb, but looking like the pass game probably going to be kept a little bit more underneath, but be able to be pretty effective in their passes in the underneath attack there and gain some yardage to keep these drives going. And the run blocking, pretty even here. Dallas 9, Buffalo number 6 on D. And then the run DVOA on offense, 16 versus 18 on the defense. Pretty evenly matched there. Nothing to write home about. Pollard, I think, is very good. Just kind of in a studs eat scenario. We've seen them not be particularly great this season. But really with the pass attack the way it is, I think they're going to be able to churn and burn there and then be fine in the run game to keep those drives sustained. Don't mind Dallas having quite a few points here, being able to go over that 24-point mark. I wouldn't be shocked to see them 28 or 30 points or more in this particular matchup. I think that's just the way they've been playing and should be fairly solid here, but more of a long methodical drives than any sort of explosive plays. Getting into that Buffalo offense, number 2 in pass protection, Dallas 18 in the pass rush. And then pass DVOA, Buffalo also number 2, Dallas number 6 in the defensive pass DVOA. So on paper, looking like Buffalo should have plenty of time to throw the ball despite Dallas having tons and tons of sacks. They probably come in situations where you'd mostly expect that. This is kind of suggestive that Buffalo should have time to throw the ball. The pass DVOA, though, being a little bit closer here, telling me that Buffalo might struggle a little bit more than they're used to in that pass game, trying to move the ball. This is probably going to be a game where it's going to heavily favor kind of Dalton Kincaid and Stephon Diggs, where, hey, we got to really grind it out. Who's their best grinders on the offensive side? I think it's Kincaid and it's Diggs and Knox. More of a avoid Gabe Davis type of week for me, even though this is saying that they should have time to throw the ball. But Dallas has been pretty good there in the pass DVOA. The one thing to note, though, is Dallas has struggled against pretty solid offensive options. So they've really beat up on those terrible teams. And then when they played one of these better teams, that defense hasn't necessarily came through, although we did see it against Philadelphia last week. Getting into the run blocking, Buffalo number 3, Dallas number 8. A little bit in the favor there of Buffalo. Don't mind James Cook in this. He should be getting positive yardage when he does touch the ball. Run DVOA number 6, Dallas number 6. Really kind of an even up matchup there. I did hear some stuff about Dallas's defense being very heavily man And then James Cook actually doing very, very good in the pass game against man coverage. So don't be shocked to see James Cook with quite a bit of pass game action in this particular matchup. He does get downfield run routes like that, so I don't mind him in this, especially if Buffalo is going to be grinding it out in the pass game. Expect that to include James Cook as well. Getting into the number 3 game on the slate, we already talked about it a little bit. San Francisco heading into Arizona. They are 12.5-point road favorites at 47.5 Vegas game total. That puts San Francisco at 30 team implied total, number 1 on the slate. Arizona down there at 17.5 for their team implied total, 15th best on the slate. Huge caveat here, anytime a road favorite is at 10 or more points, they have only covered that spread 10% of the time, so that home underdog really fighting it out against these teams that are really lopsided coming into the home team. We haven't seen that necessarily come to fruition. It's kind of a 1 for 3, I think, this season in terms of the home team covering that spread. But keep that in mind. It's a pretty heavily skewed number in the favor of the home team being able to cover that. Not saying that Arizona's going to win this, but be aware of the stat regardless that they might keep it closer than you'd expect. Getting into the San Francisco side, 21st offensive pass protection, Arizona 21st in defensive pass rush. Telling me San Francisco does take sacks in a situation like this. They might find it a little bit easier to not take those against this Arizona squad. The pass DVOA, though, is where it gets interesting. San Francisco at number 1 in the pass DVOA and offense. Arizona 31st, so huge discrepancy there. It doesn't get much bigger than that. Really telling me that San Francisco's probably should have some time here, and they're going to be very explosive in their plays. I know Debo's really killed it the last 3 weeks. I think this is looking more and more like an Ayuk game where he's going to be able to get open deep and have a lot of success against this Arizona squad. The only thing that might hold him back, though, is Christian McCaffrey absolutely dominating. So looking at the run blocking, San Francisco number 4, Arizona 32nd. So dead last. San Francisco 3rd in run DVOA, Arizona 28th. Really indicative that San Francisco, every single drive out there, should absolutely dominate Arizona. Based on paper and not looking at this Arizona squad yet, really seeing why San Francisco is favored so heavily. Looks like they're going to absolutely smash on offense. Brock Purdy obviously in play too for DFS, but really like McCaffrey this week. If you advanced in any of your best ball leagues like I did with Christian McCaffrey on there, you can expect him probably to have a really, really good game here. I wouldn't be shocked to see him with 2 plus touchdowns in this particular matchup. If you can place a prop bet for over 1.5 touchdowns for Christian McCaffrey, I would be okay throwing some money of my own down in a bet like that. Should be absolutely dominant performance from San Francisco's offense. Getting into the Arizona side, 23rd in offensive pass protection, San Francisco number 12, heavily in the favor of San Francisco. They should be able to generate some sacks here. Arizona going to need to get the ball out a little bit quicker if they want to be successful in this game. So that's really going to be Rondale Moore. Tight ends we've seen be very successful in Arizona this year, so don't be shocked to see McBride with a lot of targets. Like I said, Rondale Moore and the running back should garner a few extra targets here against the San Francisco defense. Pass DVOA, San Francisco 4, Arizona 26. Telling me Arizona is going to be pretty poor when they do throw the ball. It's going to be underneath, and they're not going to be very effective or very efficient when they are passing the ball. Is the run game any better? San Francisco 9th in stopping the run. Arizona 23rd in offensive run blocking. So kind of getting hit behind the line of scrimmage, not being super successful, gaining yards when you'd hope. The run DVOA, though, a little bit closer. 17 for San Francisco, 14 for Arizona. That's telling me Arizona, if they're going to move the ball, it's probably going to be on the ground and dumping the ball off kind of those running backs and tight ends in a particular matchup like this. Kyler, if you can avoid it, do not start him this week. It's not looking great for him. The only saving grace is if he's getting flushed out of the pocket under pressure. You could see him with quite a few more rush attempts in this game. But really not a team that I'm interested in attacking for DFS purposes. I think it's an onslaught type game where if you can get several San Francisco players in there, you're probably going to be sitting really, really good, like an IU CMC stack, and then try to get some cheaper players elsewhere. All right. With that one out of the way, we're going to get into the number 4 game on the slate, Tampa Bay, Green Bay. That's all the way down at 42.5 already, so big gap there, like I said at the beginning. Keep that in mind. Tampa Bay heading into Green Bay. Green Bay, 3.5-point home favorites. It's a 42.5 Vegas game total, giving Green Bay a 23-point team implied total. Tampa Bay at 19.5. That gives Green Bay the 6th best total on the slate for team implied totals, and Tampa Bay at number 12. Getting into the Tampa Bay offensive pass protection, number 13, Green Bay 20, slightly in the favor there of Tampa Bay. Expect them to have a little bit more time than they're used to throwing the ball this week. Offensive pass DVOA, number 18 for Tampa Bay, 26 for Green Bay. Again, slightly in the favor here of Tampa Bay. I'd expect them to be able to have some explosive plays and to be, fine moving the ball in the air, being able to kind of grind out those drives and have success on the third downs, perhaps when they get into those situations and having to throw on like a 3rd and 5. I'd expect them to be able to keep the chains moving. On the run blocking side, Tampa Bay has been awful, 29 and 26. Fortunately for them, Green Bay 23rd and 25th in stopping the run. Really looking like Tampa Bay's offense should be thriving in this. It's a slight favor there in the pass game. The run game is pretty neutral here, so Tampa Bay is probably going to find the running a little bit easier than they're used to, which is good for Rachaad White. I think he's going to have a pretty solid game here against Green Bay. For those of you who advance with him in your best ball, which is probably a lot of people, he's very one of those league winners this season who outperformed his ADP massively. He looks like he's in a good spot here against Green Bay this week. And really in that pass game, I think Mike Evans is your go-to. He had a dud week last week. I'd expect him to be able to bounce back in this game against Green Bay. On the offensive side for Green Bay, they're number 6 in pass protection. Tampa Bay 16th in the pass rush. Telling me that Green Bay should not get sacked very often in this particular matchup. Be able to have some time to throw the ball downfield, which is certainly what Jordan Love likes to do. And then the pass DVOA, Green Bay number 7, Tampa Bay 18. Again, indicative that Green Bay should be able to pass the ball and be pretty effective and pretty explosive while passing the ball against this Tampa Bay side. Green Bay got a lot of injuries there in the wide receiver room. It sounds like Dontavian Wicks is dealing with an injury. We did have Christian Watson out last week. I don't know if he'll be back in time for the Sunday game. But really, Jaden Reed looking like a good option, but he's also questionable. I saw he was limited today in practice on Thursday, so he's probably going to end up playing. But really kind of getting down to Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed there as kind of the last options there in Green Bay. Tucker Kraft at tight end might end up getting quite a few more targets. We did see Aaron Jones, if he comes back, would be actually a very good option in the pass game, I think. We did see A.J. Dillon go out with a broken bone. I think he's not going to play this week, so monitor that as we get closer to Sunday as well. Getting into the running side for Green Bay, 18 versus 18. Pretty even there. And then in the DVOA, Green Bay 23rd, Tampa Bay 16, slightly in the favor there of Tampa's defense. Wouldn't expect Green Bay to have a great game on the ground. It's not horrible, but if they're going to be moving the ball, it's going to be in the air. Tampa Bay looking like they're going to be able to move the ball better than expected. Green Bay, pretty good in the pass game there. Wouldn't be shocked to see them have a solid week as well. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than this 3.5 points is suggesting. Green Bay being able to move it in the air, but stalling out perhaps on the run game side. I wouldn't be shocked to see Green Bay with quite a few field goals there. So if you're in a league with kickers, Green Bay this week I think is a solid option depending on what the wind looks like. So keep that in mind. All right, number 5, New York Giants in New Orleans. Well, if you can believe it, these two terrible offenses are actually the 5th best out of 10 teams on the slate this week. So keep that in mind when you're setting your DFS lineups and starting your start-sit decisions in your home leagues. So All the way down now at Vegas game total of 39. So we went from like 47.5. 2 games later, we're down at 39. Huge drop. New Orleans, 6-point home favorites. 5th best game total on the slate. That 6-point home favorite gives New Orleans 22.5 team implied total. 7th best on the slate. New York Giants down at 16.5. 17th best out of 20 teams on this slate. Red across the board for the Giants, 32nd in pass protection, 30th in pass DVOA, 32nd in run blocking, 31 in run DVOA. So how's New Orleans defense stack against that? Well, they don't generate a whole lot of pressure, not getting a lot of sacks. So hey, immovable force meets unstoppable object, whatever that term is. Giants might actually find themselves with a little bit more time to throw the ball. New Orleans might find themselves with a little bit more success getting after the quarterback and then generating some sacks here. I don't hate New Orleans, as a DFS play just in general because the run game, not great either. But hey, they could be getting some sacks here against this Giants squad. The pass DVOA is a big favor for New Orleans. They're top 10 at number 9 and Giants at 30th in pass DVOA. Telling me that Giants aren't going to be very explosive. I'm not going to be doing well in situations where you'd hope they would be doing well. So keep that in mind. I think New Orleans can stop that pass game. And hey, maybe they generate some sacks in the process there against DeVito and the Italian King there in Giants territory. The run blocking, a little bit worse there for the Giants. They're 32nd, like I said. New Orleans, 21st in run stopping, 24th in run DVOA. So really looking like Giants probably going to be playing from behind the line of scrimmage when they do run. They might find it a little bit easier, though, against this New Orleans squad to have some success with them being 24th versus the pass game. If there's going to be any sort of success, if New Orleans getting after them, Barkley's really the only one I'm interested from this Giants squad. We could have Darren Waller coming back, and if that's the case, I don't necessarily hate him in the pass game either. Getting into the Saints side, they're 15th in offensive pass protection, Giants 31st in the pass rush. So indicative that they should have plenty of time to throw the ball in this particular matchup. Pass DVOA, though, in the favor of the Giants defense. New Orleans at number 22, Giants defense at 14. Again, slight favor there of the Giants. Wouldn't expect the New Orleans pass game to be super successful there, but if they got time to throw, I don't certainly have any issues with starting Chris Olave in any sort of start-sit decisions for your home leagues, dynasty leagues, whatever you might be in the playoffs. Keep him in your thoughts as you go forward there. Should be in an okay position in this matchup. Run blocking, pretty good though. New Orleans number 7, Giants 28th in stopping the run. And then the run DVOA, New Orleans number 12, Giants 29th in stopping the run. Heavily in the favor of New Orleans. I'd expect Alvin Kamara to have a pretty solid game here in the run attack. Certainly one of those guys that you could play in DFS, but if he's going to be expensive, I think you got some other better plays probably elsewhere on the slate, like a CMC. You're probably better off just going up and getting the 2 to 4 touchdown upside versus a game like this where maybe New Orleans isn't moving the ball very well, not getting pushed on the pace. Kamara's upside certainly not as juicy as somebody like CMC this week. All right, getting into the 6th game on the slate, Chicago in Cleveland. Double check those weather reports and see what it's like there in Cleveland before this game starts. But we do have Chicago heading into Cleveland with Cleveland as 3-point home favorites. It's a 38.5 Vegas game total, 6th best on the slate, giving Cleveland a 20.75 team implied total, 10th best on the slate. Chicago at 17.75 is the 14th best on the slate. Chicago 27th in offensive pass protection, taking a lot of sacks. Cleveland 3rd in generating pressure, getting sacks. Defensive pass rush at 3. And then pass DVOA, Chicago 24th, Cleveland number 1 in defensive pass DVOA. Really expect Chicago to struggle in the pass game this week. Probably going to have to look elsewhere to move the ball. If you got Justin Fields in any sort of playoff matchup, be careful. I don't think this is going to be a great matchup for him. The only saving grace, again, similar to one of the other games that we previewed, like Kyler Murray, he could be getting flushed out of the pocket a lot more, scrambling. He does get a lot of designed runs there in Chicago as well, making their 3-headed backfield really a four-headed backfield in terms of the actual rush attempts that pop up on a week-to-week basis. So kind of a void there for me on the Chicago pass game. The run blocking, Chicago number 8, Cleveland number 1. Not looking great there for Chicago, a little bit more difficult than they're used to. And then run DVOA, Chicago 13, Cleveland number 3. Of the two, it looks like Chicago's run game is going to be the better of the two ways to move the ball. And really, we saw Deonta Foreman kind of take that backfield over last week. I would assume that kind of continues here, but you can't really trust any of these running backs. I'm not going to be starting any of them in, start-sit decisions for season-long leagues. I'm certainly not going to have any of them in DFS. With that being said, I think Justin Fields probably off my list for DFS as well, if they're looking like they're going to score almost no points in this matchup. Cleveland side, number 16 in offensive pass protection, Chicago 32nd in the pass rush, so not getting to the quarterback and sacking them. Cleveland middle of the pack there in terms of taking sacks. Pass DVOA, Cleveland 27, Chicago 24. We have seen Chicago play a little bit better, but this is indicative that Cleveland might find the pass attack a little bit easier than they're used to. And we've certainly seen Joe Flacco the last couple of weeks be very effective in the pass game. You could probably expect that to continue. Amari Cooper is certainly in play for DFS. Wouldn't be shocked if he does go over 100 yards and score a touchdown in this particular matchup. Getting into the run blocking, Cleveland 25, surprisingly, and Chicago at number 3, defensive run stopping. So wouldn't expect Cleveland's run game to be very effective in this. Jerome Ford kind of in the void. And then the run DVOA, Chicago number 10, Cleveland 20. This is kind of telling me that Cleveland's run game's in a void here. Like I said, Ford and Kareem Hunt there, you can probably avoid them. Looking at the Cleveland squad, probably to move the ball in the air game. And like I said, Cooper looking more and more impressive here in terms of a DFS play. Again, wouldn't be shocked to see him over 100 yards and a touchdown in this matchup against Chicago this week. All right, let's get into the number 7 game on the slate. We actually have 3 of them tied for 7th best. It's Houston, Tennessee, Jets in Miami, and then for some reason it's Kansas City, New England's the other one. So we're going to start with the Houston and Tennessee matchup here. Should be the first one that we scroll to. Looking at this one, Houston, Tennessee, certainly a couple rookie quarterbacks going at it here potentially. Tennessee, 3-point home favorites over Houston. That's 37 Vegas game total, tied for 7th best on the slate, giving Tennessee a 20-point team implied total, 11th best out of 20 teams. Houston at 17 is the 16th highest team implied total on the slate. Houston, number 24 in offensive pass protection. Tennessee, 7th in the defensive pass rush. They've been pretty good at getting after the quarterback and getting home and getting sacks in those situations. So don't be shocked to see Houston under a little bit of duress here, trying to take some sacks. In the defensive pass DVOA, they're number 6, though, and Tennessee at number 29. So kind of a pass funnel there. While Tennessee can get sacks in situations where you might not expect it. In general, it's been a really pass funnel defense. People have been able to torch them. Somehow Miami didn't do that last week. But really, if we got C.J. Stroud here, I do not mind him or these Houston receivers, whichever ones are playing in there. Certainly a viable option in DFS as kind of some deeper dart throws. Getting into the run blocking, Tennessee's been pretty good in that department all season. Number 10 in stopping the run and number 4 in defensive run DVOA. Houston in the 20s, 22 for offensive run blocking, 28th in offensive run DVOA. Telling me that Singletary and Pierce are kind of off my board in terms of DFS. Starting them in any sort of playoff game, probably not a very good decision. And if Houston's going to be moving the ball, it's going to be in the air. Tennessee side, 28th in offensive pass protection, Houston 22. Tennessee 19th in offensive pass DVOA, Houston 28th in the defensive pass DVOA. Telling me Tennessee's been pretty bad, taking some sacks, but Houston not necessarily getting a ton of sacks there. So Tennessee probably has a little bit of time to throw the ball, or maybe slightly more than they're used to in most games. And they should be pretty effective when they are passing it. So I don't mind DeAndre Hopkins in a situation like this. Chike Okonkwo could be pretty explosive against this Houston squad as well. Getting into the run side, Houston number 2 in stopping the run. Tennessee number 10 in offensive run blocking, so slight favor there of Houston. Actually a +8 there, pretty solidly in the favor of Houston's defense on that aspect. But the run DVOA is pretty neutral. Houston 13 on defense, Tennessee 15 on offense. Kind of a stalemate there. Studs eat. I don't know if Derrick Henry's a stud at this point in his career. We're really seeing him drop off this season. But really, it's not too bad of a spot here for Tennessee. Probably finding it a little bit more difficult to run than they're maybe used to, but the pass game looks like it's going to be a little bit easier against Houston. So don't mind them being able to move the ball against Houston. Houston kind of should be a similar situation where the run game's not as good. Pass game looking like how they're going to have to move the ball. All right, let's get into the next one. On the slate, Jets and Miami. Kind of an interesting one here. We got a top 5 team, but a low game total overall because the Jets are so bad. So this is, again, a 37-point Vegas game total. We have Miami as 9.5-point home favorites, giving them a 23.25 team implied total, 5th best on the slate. Jets at 13.75 are the worst team on the slate, 20th. Jets, 30th in pass protection, 31st in offensive pass DVOA, 31 in offensive run blocking, 32nd in offensive run DVOA. Really bad across the board. Miami, kind of a middle of the pack, a little bit above average in defensive pass category, so 13th in pass rush, generating a little bit of a sack rate there. And then defensive pass DVOA, a little bit above average, so should be a big favor for Miami in stopping the Jets' pass attack here. Miami's defense looking really solid, especially in those seasonal leagues. Run stopping 13th and 20th for Miami. Again, the Jets at 31 and 32. Wouldn't expect the Jets to be able to move the ball at all in offense. It's really looking like Miami's defense should be pretty good here. Kind of slightly above average defense going against a really bad offense. And it's at home for Miami, so I'd expect them to really dominate, especially in that tough loss against Tennessee last week. I would expect their defense to come out here and play well against this Jets squad, divisional matchup and everything. So expect Jets to really struggle on offense on this. Kind of a full fade for me in DFS. Getting into the Miami side for offense, number 4 in offensive pass protection, Jets 4th in defensive pass rush. Miami 3rd in offensive pass DVOA, Jets 3rd in offensive pass DVOA. Pretty much a stalemate there. Studs eat. I think Tyreek Hill could have a really good game in this against the Jets, although he is injured, so he might not even play in this. If that's the case, Waddle comes in there. I don't think he's as good as Tyreek Hill, not even close. I think it's a game where he would struggle, actually, without Tyreek Hill there. So if Tyreek Hill's out, I'd expect Miami's pass game to really struggle here. Waddle would be the biggest beneficiary, taking on quite a few extra targets, but probably getting a lot of dump offs to the running backs in that point as well for this Miami squad. Getting into the running game here for Miami, number 1 in run blocking, Jets number 7 in stopping the run, and Miami number 2 in run DVOA, Jets middle of the pack at 15. Really telling me like pass game looking like a stalemate, if not a kind of a bad matchup compared to what Miami's used to. Run game is going to be the better of the two matchups for them, so don't mind Mostert, don't mind Achane in this particular week. Really, if I'm going to attack the Miami game, it's going to be those 2 running backs, and I'm probably going to fade that pass game. Even if Hill comes back and he's a little banged up, I'd be nervous to start him in DFS just because he's going to be expensive and the game environment here isn't very good with the defense probably dominating. Running backs really going to be how I think Miami controls this game and pulls out the victory at home here. All right, last game at number 7 is Kansas City and New England right below this. A couple struggling teams here. Kansas City, 7.5-point road favorites going into New England here. So again, that 37-point Vegas game total gives Kansas City 22.25 team implied total, 8th best on the slate. New England at 14.75 is second worst at number 19. Kansas City, number 1 in offensive pass protection, not taking a lot of sacks. New England, 29th in a defensive pass rush, not generating a lot of sacks. Don't expect the defense there for New England to get sacks. Offensive pass DVOA, number 4 for Kansas City, 21st for New England. New England's been pretty good lately, last 4 games, but really not playing anybody with, Patrick Mahomes on the team might do that for you. On paper, this is looking like a pretty good matchup for Kansas City, and like they should be pretty explosive in the pass game and be able to kind of dominate in that regard. If that's the case, I'd expect Kelsey and Rashee Rice to be the biggest beneficiaries here. If they're going to have a ton of time to throw it, MVS and Justin Watson are your guys. If you think that's going to be the route that they go, certainly could be very explosive against this New England team. If they're going to be focusing on Kelsey, even more so looking at Rice and then Watson and MVS to have a bigger game and a bigger role in this particular game. Offensive run blocking, Kansas City number 14. New England, that's really how they've been doing it, stopping the run, number 5. Kansas City 9th in run DVOA. New England number 1 in defensive run DVOA. Really looking like, hey, Pacheco might not play here. He still hasn't practiced yet this week. He's got that shoulder issue. They did say likely it was a multi-week injury, and he's still not practicing this week. So I'd expect him to be out as of Thursday evening. It hasn't been announced, but really I think that's what's going to end up happening. They're not in a good situation anyway. It looks like the pass game is going to be how they attack it. So in that event that Pacheco doesn't start, CH might become a very popular play in DFS. That's one you want to avoid. It doesn't look like he's going to have a very good game here. McKinnon also an avoid for me as well, even if they're cheap. Getting into the New England side, they're number 10 in offensive pass protection. Kansas City number 2 in the defensive pass rush. New England does like to get the ball out quick, but Kansas City also can get after the quarterback. I'd expect maybe a little bit of that on the Kansas City defensive side on this game. Pass DVOA is really where it gets interesting. New England 28th, so one of the worst teams in the league. Kansas City 5th in defensive pass DVOA. Wouldn't expect New England to be able to pass the ball very well in this matchup and probably be under duress, needing to get the ball out a little bit quicker. Good thing for Ezekiel Elliott. I think you can see another 6 to 8 targets come his way in this matchup and keep the rest of it kind of underneath there. Juju Smith-Schuster style, kind of in a revenge game as well against Kansas City. Run game, though, is where it's at. New England 15, Kansas City 27 in stopping the run, and then run DVOA, New England a little bit below average at 19, but Kansas City at 30. Really, this is telling me if I'm going to start anyone from New England, it is going to be Ezekiel Elliott. I think he's going to have a pretty solid game in this matchup against Kansas City, especially if Kansas City's putting up points. I would not be shocked to see Zeke have 8 or 9 receptions in a game like this, and that be kind of how Bill Belichick tries to control that offense is through Zeke. Don't be shocked if it's a little bit closer than this 7.5 point game total, as well as Kansas City might struggle there in the run game. All right, with that one done, we can get to the worst game on the slate. 10th out of 10, Atlanta, crummy team against an even worse and even more crummy team in Carolina. 34-point Vegas game total, puke-worthy here at number 10. That 3-point road favorite for Atlanta heading into Carolina gives them an 18.5 team implied total. Carolina down at 15.5. That gives Atlanta the 13th best and Carolina the 18th best team implied totals on the slate. Gross game overall. Can we glean anything from it? Atlanta 25th in offensive pass protection, 23rd in pass DVOA. Carolina 27th in pass rush, 15th in pass DVOA. Really kind of telling us Atlanta might find themselves with a little bit more time to pass the ball than they're used to. This is similar to last week where, hey, they might have some time to kind of throw the ball, but the pass DVOA wasn't really in their favor. We did see Drake London crush last week in a similar situation. So, is that going to repeat itself? I don't know. It could have just been random variance, but really on paper looking like Atlanta should have some time to throw the ball, and then they're probably not going to be super effective when they do throw the ball. They're just kind of behind the ball there. More of a grinded out type of game, which might be good for a little bit of additional PPR points for some of the pass catchers there. Run blocking, though, is where it's at. Atlanta 16 and 18, Carolina 29th and 32. Really, this is the bread and butter for Atlanta's offense, is running the ball. I think Bijan has a really, really solid game here. I wouldn't be shocked to see him, over 100 yards, score a touchdown in this. Carolina has really been giving it up on the ground to the opposing team. So look for Bijan to do very well in that department. For Carolina, they're 29th in offensive pass protection. Atlanta 28th. Carolina obviously way down there at 32nd in offensive pass DVOA. Fortunately for them, Atlanta down at 30 in defensive pass DVOA. They actually might find it a little bit easier to pass the ball in this particular matchup against Atlanta. And that's really going to be how they have to move the ball, because that run DVOA and run blocking is not very good. Carolina 27 and 27 in that department. Atlanta 12th and 12th in defense. So really looking like they're going to struggle there in Carolina to run the ball. They kind of are just running the ball in general, trying to keep the ball out of Bryce Young's hands, running a lot more than you would expect given the game situation. So kind of seems like they've given up on the season, running a lot more than they should. But Carolina pass game certainly in a situation where they could be a little bit better. Atlanta, though, should be running the ball very well in this particular matchup. I think Atlanta takes this game like Vegas says. All right, that's going to do it for the main slate. Next, we'll take on the final two games, which are Sunday night and Monday night. Got some good ones here. Playoff matchups. Baltimore and Jacksonville is Sunday night football this week. All right, and we're going to look at this game more of an island game context, but 42.5 Vegas game total. Not very high here. We do have Baltimore actually 3-point road favorites, giving them a 22.75 team implied total and giving Jacksonville a 19.75 team implied total. Baltimore 22 in offensive pass protection. Fortunately for them, Jacksonville 26 in the pass rush. Baltimore probably finds themselves Lamar Jackson with a little bit extra time to throw the ball against this Jacksonville defense. However, the DVOAs are pretty evenly matched here. Baltimore number 9, Jacksonville number 10. Baltimore may find the pass game a little bit less effective than they're used to against this Jacksonville defense. Don't be shocked to see that, even with time to throw. Could be more of a grinded out type of situation against Jacksonville, which is probably going to favor more of Isaiah Likely and some of these shorter plays like a Zay Flowers type week, more so than OBJ, who we've seen be pretty successful here in the last few weeks on actually pretty limited opportunities as well. The run blocking, Baltimore number 6 and number 1 in the run DVOA. Jacksonville really good as well, number 4 in defensive run stopping, number 2 in defensive run DVOA. So we expect Baltimore to be able to run the ball as well as they're used to, and they've been really good in this department the entire season. They may find it a little bit more of a struggle. Really looking at this, hey, they're going to find themselves with a little bit more time to throw the ball, but it is going to be a grind to move the ball. The explosive plays might not be there. It's just going to have to be more of a dink and dunk type thing rather than getting chunk plays. Same with the run game, not getting chunk plays. More so just grind it out, go down the field. In a situation like this, I'd normally say, hey, it's pretty evenly matched here. Don't be shocked to see 2 or 3 field goals put up for Baltimore in this particular matchup. So keep that in mind. On the Jacksonville side, number 11 in offensive pass protection. Baltimore number 1 in the defensive pass rush category. Expect Trevor Lawrence to be under duress in this, maybe taking a few sacks on that bum ankle that he's got going on right now. Defensive pass DVOA number 2 for Baltimore. On their defensive side, Jacksonville 12th in offensive pass DVOA. Again, pretty heavily in the favor there of Baltimore. I'd expect Jacksonville to struggle a little bit on offense, need to get the ball out a little bit quicker. Probably more of an Evan Ingram, dropping it off to the pass catching back there, Travis Etienne a few more times. And then maybe Calvin Ridley as well. I think we'll see him get a little bit more involved in the Zay Jones type, trying to get that ball out a little bit quicker. On the run blocking side, it's really heavily in the favor of Baltimore's defense here. Jacksonville 30th in run blocking, 24th in offensive run DVOA, both red there. Baltimore 17 in stopping the run, number 9 in defensive run DVOA. It's really looking like Baltimore is going to stuff Jacksonville here. I don't think Jacksonville, at home is going to put up a very big fight here. Looking like that offense is going to struggle a little bit. I don't mind Baltimore's defense in an island game situation like this where, hey, Baltimore, they're going to be maybe moving the ball methodically, putting up some points, scoring a touchdown here, field goal there, really forcing Jacksonville to try to move the ball through the air, leading to some more sacks here for the Baltimore side and maybe not putting up a whole lot of points. So I don't mind Baltimore defense in this particular matchup. Jacksonville, if I can get in players, it's either going to be Ingram, Ridley, or Etienne here. I think the people that are going to get those quicker passes from the Jacksonville side. You could go the Trevor Lawrence route and just kind of figure that he's going to spread the ball around to quite a few players, and if they get in close to the end zone, he'll be the one running it in for the touchdown, which really kind of negates the rest of the not division, but the positional players there from reaching their ceiling in a particular matchup like this. All right, on to the Monday Night Football game. We have Philadelphia heading into Seattle. Philadelphia 3.5-point road favorites. It's a 47.5 Vegas game total, so a little bit better here. That gives Philadelphia 25.5 team implied total. Seattle there at 22 for their team implied total. On the Philadelphia side, 17th in offensive pass protection. Seattle 24th in the pass rush. Philly probably finds themselves with a little bit of extra time to throw the ball, which is good for them. Pass DVOA, number 10 for Philly's offense, 27 for Seattle's defense. Expect Philadelphia to be pretty explosive here if they're having time to throw the ball. A.J. Brown, certainly going to be in play. They do have Dallas Goedert back. He certainly could have a solid impact here. Devonta Smith, I really like the pass game against the Seattle defense. It really looks like they're going to shine in this particular matchup. The run blocking, Philly 20th, Seattle 15. Offensive run DVOA, Philly number 5, Seattle 19. So not heavily in favor of Philadelphia compared to the pass game, but also that DVOA number 5 versus 19 really heavily in the favor of Philadelphia. So that's suggestive that they will be able to run the ball pretty effectively, keep those drives going. Pass game should be very explosive. I'd expect Philly to put up some points against Seattle here in this particular matchup. Really in an island game setting, you're going to have to pick your poison on which players that you want, but I think Jalen Hurts is going to be the driver of a lot of the points for Philly. Keep that in mind. Really good captain pick. Seattle side, 18th in offensive pass protection. Philly 15th in defensive pass rush. Pretty even there. Nothing to write home about. Standard day at the office. 23rd in defensive pass DVOA for Philly. Number 11 in offensive pass DVOA for Seattle. Philly's really been shredded by wide receivers, especially number 1 wide receivers. This is a situation where I think DK Metcalf and Lockett could have really, really solid games here against Philly. Especially if Philly's putting up points, Seattle's going to need to pass the ball. Really good situation for Geno Smith as well. So really, really liking the Seattle side here, especially if Philly's putting up points. I think Seattle's going to have to pass the ball quite a bit, and they're probably the cheaper of the options in terms of pricing in a one-game slate, captain showdown matchup type situation there. And Seattle does play a lot faster than Philadelphia as well, so keep that in mind. Run game, pretty neutral there for run stopping and run blocking. So Philly at number 19, Seattle at 21. And then the run DVOA for Seattle's offense, 22, Philadelphia at number 14. So Seattle shouldn't be able to run the ball very well. It's not a terrible matchup, but they're going to be kind of behind the ball there in that sense. If Philly's putting up points, I think Seattle's really only moving the ball via the air. So that's probably the route that you're going to want to attack for Seattle's offense. In terms of DFS purposes, you could probably go down to the number 3 option there, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and hope that he has a solid matchup against Philadelphia here due to this pass DVOA discrepancy. But looking like, hey, Philly's really going to move the ball. I'd expect them to have a pretty solid game. Seattle pass game should be all right, but they're going to struggle there in the run game, which tells me their field goal unit could be heavily in play here. But if they're getting behind by a ton, I'd expect that opportunity to kind of cease to exist after the second half if they're down by quite a bit. Either way, looking like Philly's going to win, move the ball very effectively. Seattle should be able to move the ball well in the air. Could see some back and forth explosive plays in particular Monday Night Football, which could be enjoyable to watch, regardless of how the fantasy games go. But really, hopefully get a little bit of info here from the Adjusted Line Play Report for Week 15, so you can take that info along with all the other info that you're getting along the way for the week, and use this to make better better and smarter start-sit decisions, put in a better DFS lineup, make those prop bet decisions just a little bit more successful as you're going through and determining those. So thanks for watching, everybody. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Would really appreciate that. Let me know if you get any wins from this. I always enjoy hearing that. That's at Toddzilla1337 on Twitter. Give us a follow on there as well. So really appreciate the view. Like I said before, have a good one. Let's go win some money together. Bye.